Welcome back to another Film Geek movie review. In just a bit, I am walking my happy butt over to the futon to check out the new documentary, Make Me Famous. Guys, I am very excited to check this film out because it was sent to me to check out pre-premiere. Yep, I'm getting to see this movie before a lot of people have had the opportunity. It has been doing the film circuit, it's been doing the festival circuit out there and everything, but this movie hasn't had its worldwide premiere to the best of my knowledge. It is having the premiere here in Kansas City September 21st, which I am going to get into later on in the review. But anyways, guys, I'm really excited and very honored to be able to check out this movie. Well, it is a documentary that tells the story of a art movement that happened in the early 80s in the East Village of New York City. It also tells the story of up-and-coming artist Edward Brzezinski. Tried my best there. I think I got it right. But anyways, it's a film art documentary, and honestly, guys, I do not know a whole lot about art. It doesn't mean that I don't appreciate art by any means. There is an art museum here in town I love going to called the Nelson Atkins Museum. So much beautiful art in there. It's just, I don't know anything about the artist or the stories or the history of the art. I just love going there to see all the really, pretty pictures, to put it in my vernacular. Well, anyways, guys, you know what? It is exciting, and it's time for me to also get over there to the futon and check out Make Me Famous. Welcome back. Just getting done checking out Make Me Famous. And guys, I enjoyed this film. Not only was I entertained, but I was also well informed. So let's get this started, shall we? We're going to get things started with the, I'm not going to call them negatives this time around because I don't really have anything negative to say about this movie. So I'm going to call it mixed feelings. And then I'm going to move into the positives to end the video on the ever so important high note. My first mixed feeling is the fact that this is presented as a pretty normal documentary. And I feel that if you're somebody that just does not like that type of format where it's like, someone goes in and talks to someone, they do an interview and then another interview, and it tells a story through just a series of interviews done by people who are either family members of certain subjects or artists who were involved in the entire movement. And if you're someone who's fine with that, this is a perfectly good, well done, well-paced documentary. But if you're someone who likes to have the dramatizations and over-the-top stuff thrown in there to make it interesting, not necessarily a documentary, more of a dramatization of something real, this is not for you. This is a straight-up documentary that it just focuses on a certain thing and it tells the real story. Another thing about this movie that I had a little mixed emotions about, little mixed feelings, is the very end of the film. It's kind of teased a little bit during the third part of the film, but it really gets focused on more as the film is starting to wrap up. And I have mixed feelings about this because, one, I don't feel like it really fit the tone of the film, and two, I really understand why they did this because it added a little levity and a little whimsy to a story that was at a point where it was getting a little down in the dumps and it needed a little something to kind of spice things up a bit. And the film goes into a conspiracy theory about the artist Edward Brzezinski, which I thought was perfectly fine and just fun. However, it just didn't feel like it fit the tone of the film. The filmmakers go into a whole search and try to prove or disprove this conspiracy theory about this artist. And while I did enjoy seeing that, and it was some, it added some, levity and some whimsy to the film, much needed in a documentary, it also didn't really fit the tone of the film at that moment. So I feel like maybe that should have been put at a different point in the film, but who am I? Who am I to say anything? Anyways, more or less just a nitpick, so let's move into the positives, shall we? As I said, this film does a really good job of informing you and telling you exactly what's going on. In the intro, I stated that I know nothing about art. I am okay with that. I am very intrigued and I really love going to art galleries and viewing art, but when it comes to artist names, types of art, different time periods, things like that, I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about the technical terminology when it comes to art. I haven't studied it. Look, as I said, I'm from just the wow, what a very pretty painting. I like that. It pulls feelings out of me. It makes me feel good or it makes me feel sad. And that's what I like about art. If it gets that emotion out of you, I'm not someone who's ever really dove into the history or anything like that. And I feel that this film did a very good job of delivering its message to a person like myself that knows nothing about it, but at the same time keeping it interested, so I want to know what's going to happen next. I liked the way the story was told. I thought the pacing worked really well. The film tells the story of this art movement that happens in the East Village of New York City, and it goes into the story of those artists and that movement, but it also singles out a particular artist in the movement, Edward Brzezinski, and it also tells his story at the same time. The movie goes back and forth by telling you the story of the movement and telling you more about Edward, and I thought that was a really cool idea by not just putting him at the very end or in the middle or something like that. I thought it kept you interested in both parts of the story, which made you want to see where things were headed at the end of it, which, as I said, for me, I wasn't a huge fan of how they wrapped everything up, but at the same time, I thought it did end the movie on a very solid, fun note when it was dealing with some pretty heavy subject matter at the time. So I completely understand where they were coming from. All in all, I really enjoyed this film. This movie is also directed by Brian Vincent, who is a Kansas City native. He was born and raised here and then went off to Juilliard College in New York, where he studied acting, and well, look at him now. He's made this documentary, he's acted in a few films, and in all honesty, I really think this is a very solid watch. If you're someone who knows absolutely nothing about about this art history, about this moment in time, this movement, if you're into, as I noticed, this has a really good connection with new wave music from that time period. I feel like if you're a fan of new wave music, you're probably going to want to watch this because the two cultures line up. Now, whether or not they really crossed over is debatable, but there is moments where they kind of lined up in ideology and look and feel and things like that. The soundtrack to this film is also really interesting. I wasn't expecting I was going to talk about the soundtrack to a documentary, but here we are. The director keeps a really cool kind of synth music kind of soundtrack to it. It really gives it that 80s vibe, like a new wave kind of soundtrack. Lots of synthesizers, drum machines like that. It really drives home that vibe of the early 80s. All in all, if this is a time period that you're interested in, you want to learn a little bit more about the subculture of the early 80s, I find this to be a very solid film for you to check out. If you're someone who was alive during that time, it does a great job of making you feel nostalgic, but at the same time teaching you a little bit something about that time period you might not have known. This is a solid movie, and it is going to be premiering here in Kansas City at the Glenwood Art Theater. If you want to check this movie out, it's over in, I think it's Overland Park, but yes, the Glenwood Arts Theater. It's premiering September 21st. I don't know the time of the movie at the top of my head. You're going to have to do that legwork for you. I don't know exactly when this movie is going to be released nationwide, whether or not it's getting a nationwide release or not. But if you get the opportunity to check this out, again, like I said, even if you're not a big fan of fine art or modern art, if you're somebody who's who does know a lot about this, it's still really interesting that I think you would probably still get some enjoyment out of it. All in all, solid film for you to check out once you find it in your area. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. Thanks again for checking out the Film Geek. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.